the studio of your mom's basement comes a podcast by two idiots in a revolving door of legends and has-beens from the oldest university in Texas. This is Purple, Gold, and Getting Old.
Well, Garrett, looks like the last episode caused a little bit of a storm on the social medias.
Not that we've ever done that before.
No, I know. It was kind of funny. You know, one of the UMHB football fan pages shared it, and the funny thing on there is like, man, I had to just drag myself out of the comments. They shared it without really giving
no context
to what it was.
No context.
Like everyone thought it was just what we thought was the best team ever at UMHB. And they're like, why isn't this guy why is Jerome Freeman only on one team? I'm like, okay,
it's a draft.
And then number two, we weren't all, especially you, going for the best. We were also like, you know what? I just really liked him. We got to hang out, and so he's going on my team, sort of thing.
And everyone's like, nobody picked Quincy Daniels. What the heck? I'm like, okay, in the episode, I say Quincy was the fastest, but I went with Peyton for a funny story. You know,
it was fun to just see how that gained a lot of traction. And I guess we probably should have known that was going to happen because we compare a lot of people, and there's just obviously going to naturally be people who are mad, people who are sharing it, you know. So
I love how Pete Medlock commented on there. He's like, I don't remember the coffee story. I'm thinking, well, if I'd have screwed up the coffee, he'd remember it.
Yeah.
Or Daryl, sorry I hit you with a snowball, bro. I was like, it's all good.
No, and I think, and once people I try to communicate to people really that episode was really just about giving us an opportunity to, in a fun way, just kind of celebrate and share stories about some of our favorite guys, not to as a definitive list of who is the greatest. I'm not even qualified to answer that, you know.
But I do reiterate one thing I said on that episode. I mean, I obviously, my team would trail yours and Andy's by at least 3 touchdowns, but it would still win the AFC and go into the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Even by having another team's kicker on there.
And speaking of best, I guess I should bring it up. You know, we did a poll on Twitter where we let people vote on the teams.
I forgot to see who won.
I was the champion.
There you go.
I won that. So
I figured I would have voted for yours too, to be honest.
Yeah, I had guys like TJ Josie and Haston Adams sharing it on Twitter because they were on the team. I'm like, let's go. So yeah, that was a ton of fun just to see everybody else's takes.
Yeah.
And I think I saw the UMHB football Instagram page. Check them out if y'all haven't. I think they talked about making their own but an actual greatest list. So I'd be super excited to see what they do with that. But we've got an episode going on today. So Garrett, tell me about who we're about to talk to.
We have author and speaker and marketer Chrissy Bernal, who went to UMHB and has made a very successful career out of marketing and branding coaching. And so it's going to be a good conversation.
All right, Garrett, you open us up then.
Cool. Well, for the second week in a row, it sounded like you were about to say, open us up in a word of prayer.
Tyler, we need to start as the pastor on this. Let's open the podcast up in prayer.
It's actually really cool because for the audience to know that the way I actually met Chrissy was because on my music podcast that I had, I actually interviewed Sierra, her daughter, over some of her music releases, and that was a cool interview. And by the way, Sierra, if you're watching this, I heard the line dance song that you just released the other day. It was really cool. So and then I guess we figured out after that on Facebook, it was like, wait, we both went to UMHB, because it's the thing about UMHB is when you find someone else that went there, there's this instant we know something that the rest of the world doesn't know as much about. So it's kind of cool.
It drives my husband nuts because if I see a license plate or a sticker or something, I'm like, yeah, go Crew.
I was at the San Antonio Zoo once, and I saw someone with a purple shirt. I was like, "Go Crew!" And they just looked at me like I was a crazy person. I'm like, ah.
There was this awful lull between 2011 and maybe 2015 or 16 where there just wasn't much school spirit. So you'd see a recent alumni and be like, yeah, go Crew. You throw the C up and they kind of look at you funny. But if you saw a Hardin Simmons graduate from that same age and you did it to them, they knew what it was and they would they were not happy about it. So, almost more fun to do that on the highway when it's the other school's sticker.
That's pretty funny.
Well,
Yes.
speaking of UMHB, what drew you to UMHB when you first chose to go to school there?
So I actually graduated high school early, and my parents wanted me to go to a parochial school of some sort. And I did go look at Baylor, and I was like, nope, this is way too big. And so then UMHB was where my mom's best friend went. And so I said, okay, well, let's go check that out. I hadn't heard of it, and went and checked it out. And then I loved whomever gave me the tour that day, did a great job. And they did the funny joke about how we have Judge Baylor's body because he wanted to be surrounded by all the girls. And I just thought that was really funny. And then I found out that I could be able to play on the volleyball team as well. And so they let me try out, and that was just awesome because I loved volleyball. So it was best of both worlds. I liked the size of it. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small. Although I have to say, coming from Houston, when I went up there and I saw that the gas station closed at 9, I was like, wait, places close? And then the whole frontage road, I was like, what are these frontage road things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Love
wife's from
it.
Houston. She calls it the feeder. I call it the access road. And it's like, we both swear we're right. So Houston things.
I only spent a little bit of time in Houston or the suburbs of Houston as a kid, but one thing that's just stuck with me is I call them feeders, and I'm like the only person I know that calls them when I meet people from Houston. Yeah, I love it.
Yep. So yeah, and I jumped right in and was on the volleyball team. I made quick friends with all the girls in the dorm. I started in Getty. That's how long ago. Getty
Oh,
was
wow.
girls. Yeah, it was a girls' dorm, and I'm pretty sure my roommate and I paid to remodel it with all our fines. Because we, not that we were bad, it was just, we were loud or staying up too late, or who knows. But yeah,
That is
so
hilarious.
now
Because
now it's my understanding it's a guy's dorm.
Yeah.
guys dorm, and they've called it the ghetto instead of Getty's ever
Yep.
since like before I
Yeah.
was there. And
Same.
it's kind of funny. My parents moved down here to Temple, I guess about 2 years ago. And it was funny. They were clearing some stuff out of their garage the other day. And of course, so they bring me all these boxes of junk from preschool all the way up through college of stuff. And my dad started laughing. He had this paper. I'm like, what is this? And he said, "Did you was Tatinda your RA?" I said, "Is that a fine?" He had my first fine. It had somehow made it into a box that ended up with
That's
them.
funny.
So yeah, my sink was dirty during room check, apparently. So
You
Yeah.
should frame that, because I know it was probably the first of many.
That's really funny.
Yeah, that one didn't cost as much money as the later ones.
I forget which one. I didn't stay there long, and I forget which one. Was it Strib, where they're by themselves?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stribling.
Yeah, that's where I moved to, and that's where I spent the rest of my time till I moved out off
Okay.
campus.
Oh, okay.
Very cool. So while you're at UMHB, what were some of your favorite traditions that you were able to take part in?
Well, I actually got to see our very first soccer game. So that was
Oh,
really
cool.
And I believe, did our football start then too? I believe
that,
it might have, because Skeeta was one of the Skeeta Jenkins was one of
Yeah.
our players.
Yeah, Skeeta.
And
Shout out.
now he's acting. But so yeah. Of course the Easter pageant was always cool. I loved, we had a lot less options then. Like, we didn't have as cool of a hub as y'all do now, or the student union building. So yeah, we just
We didn't have it either.
Oh really? Okay.
We were
I've
still
seen
in the
pictures.
basement.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures now. I'm like, dang, that's nice.
I saw somebody complain about the food quality. I was like, shut up. y'all don't even know.
I got my first email that wasn't the university email there, because those were new too, because I started before Google was
Yeah.
and not too far before it, but a couple of years. And so I got my Hotmail address,
Yes.
and I remember being in the computer lab getting my Hotmail address signed up.
I feel like everybody has their like, this started when I was going, like for me, it was Facebook was barely like, it was turning a year old when I was there. Like everyone's like, have you started your Facebook profile? You'll need that. I was like, what is no, I just now got a MySpace put together. What is this? You know?
Yeah, you know, so I survived college, and actually probably it's better that it wasn't around when I was in
Oh,
college,
yeah.
but I survived college without Facebook.
Facebook was great for college when we were there. I don't think it would be now, but it was the only platform. So like for Couch Crew, it basically was our life and soul because we were able to plan events,
Yeah.
invite people to the events. It was so centralized. People read that more than email. So it was great for us. But I feel like if you did it now, because I spent 10 years managing student organizations, and it was kind of like if you couldn't tell them what to do with Snapchat or stories or anything and reading
those
analytics,
kids
it's
don't
like,
even have Facebook now.
no, oh, no. What they do is they start a profile when they're like 12 and then they never update it ever again. And then
Yeah.
and it's weird. Like I would tell students, like, I know y'all don't use Facebook much. Create the event, send them an invite. They'll get the email, so they'll at least know, and then remind them about it in person. Like, no, we'll just do it through word of mouth. I was like, this is why you have 5 people at your events, but whatever.
You know, I do remember I used to run every morning. I would run around the campus, which was then about 4.5 miles. And I really enjoyed it because it was, you know, a pretty quiet town. And so I would use that as like my devotional time, or, you know, just prayer time and just thinking and all of that. And that was one of the things I loved, is just the ability to be able to do that. And I felt perfectly safe. And, you know, I wouldn't do that around here.
Yeah. So you live in Houston, and I meant to ask because we lived in Houston for about 3 years. What part of Houston?
I live on the northwest side.
Okay. We were just on the outside of West U. So we like weren't
Okay.
in it. Everyone looks at me like, ooh, bougie. I'm like, no, we didn't live in West U. I was across the street from the Joel Ostadome. So like if I had a really good throw, I could have hit it with a football. But yeah, it was but Tyler can tell you I don't have a good throw. So so you're at UMHB, you were on the volleyball team. What's something that was like an event or a tradition or something that you wish you could have been more of a part of?
You know, I wish I would have continued playing volleyball more. I loved the volleyball team, and I had never, I guess I wanted a little bit more independence from my parents. I was, again, remember, I graduated high school early, so I was really young. Um, but I quit the volleyball team so that I could go get a job because I wanted more money during the month, which was the stupidest idea, because I think I made like $4.10 an hour or something. So that was really dumb, but I got, you know, free movies, which was cool.
Cool.
But you know, I was part of the choir, so I got to do that. I did want to do the travel team, but I didn't make it. It's okay. I still liked the choir, the choir team.
So music runs in the family is what I'm hearing.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, my original major was vocal. I was in the vocal major, but when I got to music theory 3, I was like, wow, this is really hard. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to be famous, you know, so I don't want to teach music. I guess I'll go into mass communications and journalism, because I did actually love journalism. Being from Houston or the Houston area, y'all might remember Dominique Saxa.
Okay.
She's a really well-known, super like glamorous news anchor here. And I wanted to be the next Dominique Saxa.
I
was on the Bells. I was the editor for the Bells while I was there.
Oh, cool.
And so that was cool.
I majored in mass comm journalism and PR and was also a Bells writer. So that's
Nice.
awesome.
See?
Unless they were writing about me and then I had to step aside.
But you know what's funny though is, you know, I got my degree and all that, and social media wasn't around yet. So that wasn't part of my degree. So I've had to learn so much more since then. And even PR has changed since then, because that's, you know, what I do now, but it's still different than it was then.
I wish we'd have had the like social media analytics and things I am terrible at, because like I'm pretty much shadow banned on a couple of platforms for no reason. And so I check the analytics and I'm like, okay, I've got almost 2,000 followers and 3 people are seeing my tweets. Cool. I wish that had been a part of it, but like I said earlier, that stuff didn't exist when we were there, or it was on its way in. So that's a good segue into kind of how you got into what you're doing now. And just to give like the real brief version for everyone watching, you are a podcaster, an author, basically like a marketing coach, public speaker, I
Yeah.
believe. So jack of all trades. How did you get into all that?
Well, I've done a lot. I mean, I graduated UMHB over 20 years ago. So, you're able to do a lot in that time span. But really, my career kind of shaped itself. I did the normal stuff like right after college. I went and worked at a staffing agency, which was fun. So I got introduced to a lot of different jobs. I did have a really cool job after college, and that was I was a recruiter for domestic staff. And that was really neat. So like I had famous clients like Lance Armstrong and whatnot. I got to find his nanny and it was really cool. So that was a really fun job. But then I moved back to Houston because that was up in the Austin area. And I moved back to Houston, and my career actually shaped itself when the girls were 10. I have identical twins. And when the girls were 10, they were thrust into the global spotlight. And I knew right then that we need to build a personal brand for each of them and really harness this PR. And, having the formal education and all of this, I thought, no, we got to do this. And I had already bought their domain names, which was cool. I had bought them when they were like 6. So clearly God was like, hey, psst, do this. But when they were 10, they were thrust in the global spotlight. So I built their personal brands, and we, it's evolved a little bit over the years, of course, because now they're 23. About to be 24 eeks. And so having to take my formal education and what I used on the fly, I've now done it for myself. And then it just organically, I started doing it for other people. And then also having been a writer myself, I got some really bad advice whenever I started writing. And it was to not market my own book. Dumbest piece of advice ever, but the person told me that would look vain if I marketed my own work. And so after flopping initially and just having some bad experiences with other marketing efforts, I thought, you know what? I don't want other authors to have to go through this. I already know what not to do. So I put together a roadmap on how to do it correctly. And so, yes, I guide people through actually treating their books like a business and not letting it just sit in the Amazon shelf or the proverbial shelf wherever, and treat it like a business. The same with their personal brands. I've been saying it for at least a decade now that everyone needs a personal brand, even if you're an employee. I don't care if you're, a beginner at the company, you need a personal brand, because the better every employee looks out there, the more authority they look like they have, the better the company looks.
Yep.
So it would behoove companies to teach their people how to have their own personal brands. So
it's very interesting. So I was listening to your interview on, and I forgot the name of the podcast, the Brazil podcast. I forgot.
That was the coffee and networking one, or cafe.
Yes. Yeah. And when you were talking about, marketing your own book, that is terrifying. Cause I mean, being a musician, like I hate self plugs, and like, I hate listening to myself sing. Ironically, like I never listen to my own music. That is like a huge no for me.
That's funny.
So when it comes to actually marketing it, it just feels so awkward. And one thing I've mentioned to you before is, working on a book of my own that I'm hoping to be done with by mid-spring. It's terrifying because it's like, I don't want to market this. Like at this point, music has taught me I'm not afraid if it fails. You went for it. My worry is more like, who's going to get mad about this? So what are some of the topics you've written about? And have you ever come across the fear of, like the legal issues and that kind of stuff? Because for me, that's the biggest crippling fear I have, is getting slapped with a cease and desist or angry email from somebody I was hoping to never hear from again. So.
Yeah, if you're talking about something real, like I do have my own nonfiction book that's in the works about some of the stuff that all went down in my early 20s. And that's one of the things that I've had to really navigate carefully, is to not get those letters, not have to like, or now you're rich and famous, I want a piece of that pie because you mentioned me in your book, or that sort of thing. So it is a lot of times you want to get a lawyer involved and make sure that you don't set yourself up for failure there. But I've written a lot about marketing. Actually, I've done ghostwriting, and so that's the part that sucks, is that I ghost wrote it, but I can't say the name of the book. I wrote yeah, two things about marketing, so I definitely know about marketing. Let's see, I help a lot of children's book authors too, because it's a little more challenging to market a children's book than it is a regular book. And
Yeah.
the key to any book is to find a way that it fits with your a trending news. So like my particular one is about embracing what makes you different. So, you know, I can find a trending topic, whether it be going back to school and the kids might be nervous about something different about themselves. So I can just attach it. And then, you know, that's where the PR side comes in too, is finding that angle that will actually marry the two, the trending topic and what your topic is. There's always a way.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned Skeeta Jenkins earlier. When he put out a couple of children's books a few years ago, he and I actually had a pretty lengthy conversation about that process and what it takes to do that. And I don't think people realize how much it takes.
Yeah, Skeeta and I have, we've kept in close contact over the years. It's pretty cool how many people from my time period that still come over. And one of my friends from the day he was on the soccer team there, he and I were great buds, and he's come to our house many, many times. And now he and my husband are great friends. And it's just really cool that those two worlds have combined.
Well, like it's such a small world, no matter what year someone graduated. Because I saw on Facebook one day, I saw you and Farrah Dunaway were talking back and forth. I'm like, wait, y'all know each other? It's like,
oh yeah,
everybody
Farrah
knows each other
at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's neat now to see our kids. And then there's another girl I went to school with, Angel. Well, she and she has a daughter who's about the same age as my girls, and they've actually all hung out. So that's
wow.
cool that our daughters, you know, got together and are hanging out. And so it's really neat to see. And then I have a friend who was also in the music program. She actually is the one who helped Sierra write her very first song when she was 11, I think.
Wow.
So it's really neat just how the world is like, it's getting into all the pieces of my world.
Yeah. Which is because I think Sierra might have mentioned that on my podcast. She was talking about, she was really young when she wrote those first songs. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's funny when we listen to them now. We're like,
oh, my early stuff doesn't exist anymore. My wife tried to keep a CD of it burned, but I was like, no, we're destroying this.
Oh,
this is never going anywhere.
That's hilarious.
So speaking of those connections of like UMHB that, you know, search all the way back and that you still have, I wanted to ask, during your time at UMHB, was there any sort of lessons that you really learned, either in the classroom or maybe like volleyball court or wherever, that have really been impactful for what you do still today?
Well, you know, it was actually I went through a really hard emotional time during that. My roommate died while I was there. My papa died while I was there, and a child that I was a nanny for during the summer died, all within the span of like a few months. So it was a really hard time, which is another reason why it took me a little bit longer to finish. So I learned a lot about my resiliency during that. And of course I learned a ton education wise, obviously, because I, you know, like I said, I do know my stuff in marketing, and I attribute a lot of that to, you know, my good foundation that I got. Funny enough, I actually still remember a lot of the stuff from my New Testament and Old Testament class. It's funny how things will like pop up, and then I'll flash back to something that was written on the chalkboard. And but yeah, I really learned a lot about my resiliency, and just I knew that I was able to stick it out. And, you know, like I said, I finished still. And at the time I had twins still, or while I was at, one of them was in the NICU. So they actually weren't supposed to be born until February 1st, but they came during Christmas break. So I didn't have to miss any school, which was nice. So Sienna, the little one, she stayed in the NICU for a long time. And so I only had one at home for a bit that I had to, you know, care for. And it was cool because UMHB was so small at the time that I would even take her to some of my classes because the professor was like, yeah, fine, come on. And, you know, she was really young. So it was perfect. So Sierra's like, yeah, I've been to UMHB. That's why I wear the hat.
I love it.
Yeah. So Sierra, she went with me a lot to class. And yeah, I just learned that I've got a lot of determination and grit.
Yeah.
I can do it.
That's cool. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You were saying that everybody needs a personal brand. And so I was hoping, could you elaborate a little bit on what exactly you would call a personal brand and then why you think that's so important?
That's a great question. So everyone needs to have some sort of clarity on their belief. Like for me, I work a lot with women, and I think it's because of many of the trials that I went through at the my early adult years. I sort of lost my sense of worth then, and so it took me a while to get that back. And I want other women to feel that same way. So I have an official belief statement, which is I believe women should embrace their worth and confidently pursue the success they desire. So that is something, you know, I've been in the women empowerment side of things for over a decade now. My own podcast was over 10 years ago. So before it was cool, but but a personal brand is just, what do you believe? What's your vision? What's your why? And what are you good at? What are you doing to actually change the world? So most people know that I'm in marketing and PR, and so it's just niching down to mostly for women, mostly for authors, you know, podcasters, personal brands, like people who are influencers or something like that.
Awesome.
So
Did you, on the whole marketing and PR, when you were in school, who were some of the professors you had? Because I know at UMHB, you can name a professor, and my mom, who started at UMHB, will be like, yeah, they were there when I was there. And more recently, my grandmother, who went there in the 50s, was like, oh, they were there when I was there.
Oh my God.
And I was yeah, shout out Dr. Kemp.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool that I'm actually Facebook friends with several of them, like Dr. Guess, you know, he was one of my professors, but Dr. Howard was probably one of my most impactful professors. And I had her for several classes, and actually she has even come to one of Sierra's gigs. Like, wow. How cool is that?
Is that Diane Howard?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I had her too.
Yeah, she's absolutely awesome. And, you know, just I remember some talks that we had, because one of our classes was really small, and so we were able to get really in depth with conversations, and she just had a pretty profound impact on me. And then there was another professor who I can't find now, but I would love to. She was the PR professor, and she was Dr. Cassie Key. She's not there anymore, and she was only there for a short time, but she was really scary, but really like awesome at the same time, because she made you level up. Like, she saw your potential, and if you weren't meeting it, she was going to call you out.
I like
so
that.
It was really cool. Yeah. So like I said, I was petrified of her, but appreciated her.
That's great. That's kind of, I remember, or right before I had a class with Carrie O, and someone told me, they're like, dude, he might fail you. He's a tough professor. I was like, that was like the most fun I had in a class. But,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Funny. So you were talking about children's books earlier, and this was not a part of my notes or any question I was going to ask. But my mom is actually in the process of, well, she's already written a couple of them. She wants to write her own children's book series. Awesome. Never written anything before, though. So I'm asking this selfishly, but we can anyone who might be writing their first children's book. What are some of the big pieces of advice you would give to someone who's writing a children's book, or if you want to make it even more general, just writing in general for the first time and trying to get published?
Sure. Well, first, I would say, don't worry about being a first-time writer. It's okay. Get a professional editor. That's going to help shore that up, so you don't have to worry about that. Secondly, get a professional formatter. And they don't have to be expensive. So I know it may sound like, oh gosh, I have to hire someone. Go ahead and do it, because it's really frustrating to try and format it all yourself. And then definitely have a marketing plan. Go ahead and start working on it. You know, I always say start working on something at least 90 days before it publishes, because you need to have that community built up. You need to like let people know, let them get excited So if she hasn't already announced that she's writing a book, she needs to go ahead and put it out there. And then, like I said, don't be afraid to do your own marketing and even PR, or hire somebody to do them for you. Even people who are traditionally published, a lot of times they think, oh, I'll just get a publishing deal and they'll do all that for me. Unfortunately, unless you're somebody super A-list, they most likely won't do much for you. They'll put it out, sure, maybe send out a press release or two, a couple social media posts, but you're still going to be responsible for doing a lot of the marketing and press work.
It's like when a musician thinks, oh, I'm sure the venue will promote the show that's at their venue. No, they won't.
Right.
The last show I played, I shouldn't say this. Oh, they're not watching this. I played a place here locally, and we're on stage, and I look at the back wall from the stage where it says upcoming shows, and it was just this blank board. I was like, what the heck?
That's funny. Yeah, that sounds about right, though.
Yeah.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, because I like to joke that my mom's the substantial size of our audience. So
Well, good.
whatever views you see, it's just her clicking and repeat over and over and over again.
Hey, well, that's good. Well, hi, Tyler's mom. Congrats on
I tweeted one day, I was like, all right, to the 5 of you that can see this, I need help on this poll. And then 3 people voted. It was great.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
No, it's
Hey,
good
what?
to hear about all
Podcasts
this.
are good. These are good for SEO and all that, especially if you put the transcript in. So
For sure.
Yeah, shout out to all the football players who've been arguing over our last episode. Y'all gave us a much needed boost. It was great.
yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome.
So, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, about how podcasting has just, everybody's got a podcast, obviously, it seems like whatever you do now, it's so easy to put yourself out there, but there's also so many people out there. Do you have anything, any bit of advice you give to people through what you do, of like how they can stand out, how they can, or find a niche, whatever it may be, to
absolutely
rise above?
Well, the first thing that's going to help you stand out a bit above other people is to not make it about you. As humans, we're pretty selfish. And if you just think about your own patterns when consuming content, usually you want something out of it. And even if it's just entertainment. So if you make sure that your marketing and any verbiage you put out is focused on what the audience is going to get out of it, how they're going to feel, how it's going to make their life better, or whatever, that's going to be the thing that's going to help set you apart from somebody who's maybe saying, here's a fun podcast, versus relive the times that something that's a little bit more specific that really lets the person know, oh, I'm going to get this out of the podcast.
That's cool.
So I like clipping like 30 seconds out of these episodes. I always try to find the funniest clip and just throw it out there. I'm like, all right, if you want to see more,
Perfect.
the episode.
Perfect. Yeah.
We ought to be careful, or else we're going to get charged with a consulting fee for this episode.
No worries. Every time I see that thing come on Facebook that's like, what could you talk about for 20 minutes with no advance notice? I'm like, marketing, specifically book marketing. Like, I've done this now for 2 decades, so it's like I can talk about it all day long. And I love doing it. I love when, I think everybody has an interesting story of some sort, and that until we, if we don't share our stories, then we can't help other people who may be going through the same thing and feel like they're the only ones. And I assure you, there is somebody out there who has this similar story as you and feels like they're all alone. So sharing your story, no matter what it is going to help. And I have truly seen how God has turned my mess, a big old mess, into a message, because my earlier, 20s years were very, very rough. And God has definitely worked really cool magic out of it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's neat, I know we have a minute left, but it's neat. I can look back and see exactly where God was like putting all the little pieces together, and all the things that have circled back. I'm like, okay, that's what that lesson was for. Got it. All right.
I love it.
That's awesome. Every time we like stop recording for a second, then hit record again, I'm afraid I'm interrupting whatever was being said at the end of the last record. Anyway, we're back. So anyone that wants to follow your work or utilize your services, anything like that, your website is chrissybernal.com. And where else can people follow you?
Well, my company site is beabetterbrand.com. But if you Google me, you're gonna find me. It's really hard for us to hide, which is why we had a stalker recently. So
Saw that. Yeah. Which,
yeah,
by the
that
way, y'all are so good about, like, if somebody is harassing like your daughter or somebody on social media or just being a jerk in the comments, y'all swoop in and y'all are like on top of that stuff. Like, even somebody
well,
last week that made some dumb comment about a song, and I mean, y'all just got in there and shut them down.
yeah, normally I don't comment because, having been on TV for, so many times, and people are really rude, people are really mean, but some people are really nice. So usually I just ignore the stupid comments. But this one I was like, nah, I'm just going to go for it. And, one of my friends was like, did you have wine? I was like, no, I actually didn't. I was like, I was just feeling saucy.
I think the most trouble we probably got in college was, the stuff that should have gotten us in trouble never really did. It was always stupid stuff like somebody was commenting on our Facebook stuff, because I usually wouldn't argue with people on my Facebook statuses. It's just everyone else would argue on there to the point where somebody would complain and turn it in. And but the arguing I would do would be like on Tyler's status or somebody. Like if I saw somebody else's status had an argument, I'm like, it's go time. Now I don't even touch it. But at the time it was like, here we go. We're gonna win an online argument.
Normally I don't even touch them, but occasionally I'll, like, if somebody is asking a question that I'm like, I don't think they're being mean, I think they genuinely have a question, then I'll pop on like on YouTube and I'll answer it. But I won't go back and forth or anything. But so because I'll go ahead and address this so maybe we don't get that in the comments. But girls are unique identical twins, and one has primordial dwarfism and the other one does not. And the number one question we get is, how is that possible if they're identical? And the way that it works is, because this is one of the questions that I see most often on anything, is, they're not identical, liars. Yeah. So it's one egg that splits, then the genetic mutation happens after the split. So that's how you can have identical twins who aren't, quote unquote, identical looking. So it's really kind of a poorly named thing. It's actually called monozygotic. So that's your science lesson for today. Thanks for coming on the talk. No.
Well, it's to me, it's like a rude / dumb question to throw at somebody. It's like, because anyone who has seen your daughters on social media, like, you can still tell they're twins. I mean, it's like, like someone says identical twins, I wouldn't even question it.
It's so crazy too. They lost the same teeth at the same time. They used to sleep on either the exact same position or the opposite, but it was like if one's arm, it was always like that. It was really kind of cool because I was like, yeah, I guess y'all are twins.
It's crazy how genetics work. So our daughter is 2 months old, and it's funny. I sleep in I'll go to bed, I will lay on my back, I will do what the chiropractor says. I will wake up like a pretzel. Like, I sleep in the weirdest positions with my arm. And I was like, oh man, I hope our poor little girl doesn't sleep like me. I walk in the room the other day, she's in her little baby swing, and sure enough, she's like in this weird pretzel thing I do. I was like, oh no.
So you doomed her.
She's going to turn 30 and have to go to the chiropractor every week.
That's funny. That's funny. Oh gosh. Well, I'm glad you're going to the chiropractor.
Yes.
Shout out to mine, Tabor Smith. I love him.
Yeah.
He's a chiropractor.
Tyler, I'm trying to think if we left any questions out, but I know there's one. It's kind of random to just throw out at the end, but we usually ask all of our guests what their favorite sports related memory at UMHB was. And the fact that you were on a team, this could be interesting.
Well, being able to see the first soccer game was so cool. And they actually had skydivers come down with the ball. So that was really, really cool. So that would probably be one that sticks out the most. But honestly, it was just being able to watch my friends play and traveling with the team itself was cool. I got to play. I didn't play a ton because I was so young. But I made some really good friends from the group. We all had our little study hour that we had to do that was actually good that they made us do our study hour. Otherwise we probably wouldn't study. So, but yeah,
think
I
they
actually
still
love it.
had that my freshman year. I think I could be. I think I remember hearing that athletes still had that study hour thing. But
Yeah, I remember signing up. So my first semester, and again, remember I was young and stupid, but I guess not stupid, but naive. So I thought, I've been going to school at 7:30 in the morning every day for, how many years? I can do it in college. So I signed up for an economics 8 o'clock and an Old Testament 8 o'clock. That was super dumb.
Old
Super
Testament
dumb.
8 o'clock was my first class in college.
Yeah, that was the dumbest thing I could have done because it's a lot harder in college for some reason.
8 a.m. philosophy is what caused me
Ooh.
to start drinking coffee.
Yep. See, we live and learn.
Exactly.
Yep. I showed up for my orientation and they were like, okay, this layout you have here, this would have you at 17 hours. Are you sure you want to do that? I was like, yeah, I'm a smart person, and one of those is chapel. Oh, I learned the hard way. Worst academic semester of college was my very first one.
One memory that I have there is the group Sierra came, which is not why I named Sierra, but the group Sierra came to perform, and I actually was at the wedding from Wendy, the girl who's at the forefront. I believe that's her name, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've talked about to any of them, but it was really cool because I actually attended their wedding. So whenever I saw them perform there, I was like, oh, this is so neat. It was just cool. So
that's
that was
awesome.
neat. Yeah, I think even there's a different chapel now.
Yeah, they've got the old one still, but they've got a second one. So
I should have gotten. I was in the pageant while I was there too.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Let's see if I have it really fast. I should have thought about it and brought it out. I even saved like some of my old newspaper articles that I had written and all sorts of stuff. I can't find it, but I know it's in here somewhere. But yeah, I still have the big old brochure from when we were in the pageant.
That's so cool.
Wow, it sounds like you were involved in just about everything you could be at UMHB at the time.
I tried to. I was at I ate a lot, so I was at the kitchen a lot, or whatever it's called now. I don't remember, but yeah, I remember the soccer guys teasing me because I would come and eat just as much as they did. But I still like to eat.
I love it.
That's awesome. Well, Belton has a lot more places to eat now than it did, and I say that because they have more now than they did 2 years ago. Someday I think we should bring the Economic Development Committee onto this podcast because some of them went to UMHB, and I mean, it's just, I watched this PowerPoint last week, and looking at what Belton is supposed to look like in the next 5 to 10 years is just insane.
Oh, wow.
It's ridiculous.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. Even though that was a really hard time in my growing up, I do have a lot of fond memories from UMHB, and that's why, anytime I see somebody with UMHB, I'm like, oh,
yeah. I love it.
Thank you so much for jumping on the pod with us and letting us pick your brain a little bit about marketing and telling us your story. That was really cool.
Yeah, I told Tyler we might learn more from this episode than
sure.
we have.
I live and breathe it, and having done for my daughters, which now Sierra is rebranding, which is challenging, and I'll say this too for people: don't be afraid to ask somebody for help on your personal brand, because it's really hard to do it for yourself because you are too in it, you're too in the weeds. So even if it's just, hey, I wrote this, have a friend look at it, what does this say to you, that sort of thing. Don't be afraid to ask somebody else, because it is really hard to write for your own, so do your own branding and whatnot. So
well, hopefully here around springtime I'll have some questions for you regarding
absolutely,
that kind of stuff.
I'm trying to put out more content myself to be helpful, so it's just y'all know it's very time consuming to do content.
Yeah.
So when I'm working on everybody else's content, it's like, oh, I forget, I gotta do my own.
True.
So, well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
We'll be sure to send this to you when it's up.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, tell your mom to keep going, and I look forward to seeing what she comes up with.
Oh yeah. Hey, who knows? She might be consulting you pretty soon.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Well, I guess, I look forward to seeing this when it's up, and I'll be sure to share it.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Well, that was helpful.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're charging us a consulting fee, because I feel like, having our, like, really for anybody who wants to create and do stuff and put something out there online.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. And one of the things, she didn't directly say this, but I feel like it was kind of alluded to, was just the idea of like how important putting yourself out there in marketing is, even if you don't think it's a big deal or take it that seriously, like that you're still like holding yourself back by not allowing yourself to market a little bit. You know, because when I think about this podcast, I'm just like, yeah, we're having fun. And if people listen, then that's great. You know, hey mom. But like, she definitely brought up some really cool points about just even what branding means. You know, I think when she said branding at first, just my kind of was like, ooh, that sounds like a Instagram influencer wannabe sort of thing. But when she dug into what like that really is, it was like, oh, really? No, everybody does need a personal brand in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I thought those really cool conversations, super helpful for us personally.
Dude, on that, have I ever told you about the logo critique I got? So, from, you know, my music logo, it's like I made it round because most social media profile things are round, and at the time I just used the logo. So for anyone that hasn't seen it, you can just go to my pages at Garrett Smith TX, but it's like a round logo that has like my initials in it, and then it's just like a metallic looking thing. Well, I played at this punk rock bar in Oklahoma City, and half the people there were completely stoned, and some of them went out on the back porch for a while, and they kind of like wandered back in at the end of the night. One of them got really concerned, and he was like, "Hey man, you rock, but you got to change your logo." I was like, "What?" This dude just reeked of weed. He was like, "It looks like a sheriff's badge, man." I was like, you afraid I'm gonna arrest you, dude?" Like,
Well,
I think he was really paranoid.
for a country / kind of rock sort of music, I feel like a sheriff's badge is kind of apropos.
Well, it's like that meme I saw one time. It was a guy in a dance hall. It was so photoshopped. It was a guy standing in the middle of a dance hall with a blue line American flag. It said, "In Texas, I like two things: outlaw country and the law."
Yeah, yeah. The little bit of cognitive dissonance there is kind of funny. Well, sweet. Yeah, that was a good episode. We're gonna have some more coming up that we're looking forward to. Football season's just around the corner, so I'm sure we'll have stuff to talk about once that gets kicked off here in, I guess, 2 weeks. I can't believe that.
Or a week?
A week and a half, really. Not this weekend, but next weekend. So
crazy. I might be at 2 games in one day. I didn't realize that until y'all were telling me what time kickoff was, and I'm like,
kickoff's at 6.
I could.
You can make it.
If I've got the energy.
Yeah,
I could be at A&M, because A&M kicks off at 11, and I'll be there, and I'll get back. And I could probably go to the UMHB game and just pass out that night.
I think they're ranked 11th, the Muhlenberg, who we're playing, so it should be a good game, playoff quality. So
I hope not. I hope we just thrash. There's a part of me that's like, man, some closer games could make more entertainment. I'm like, I don't want that. I never want to wonder who's gonna win.
Yeah. Well, sweet, man. You know what? It's a week and a half away from football season, and
yeah, HSU still sucks no matter.